what have I now done to the tissues that contain the cells of the body?
Cut them off from oxygen.
I have cut them off from everything. I have cut them off from nutrients, and I have cut them off from being able to get rid of waste. Does that make sense? And then it just continues and continues and continues. So it's a really good idea, all right, that you either know your blood type, or that hopefully if there comes a situation and they need to know the blood type, that person's going to do their job right. All right, to make sure that you don't have this happen. Because this has a pretty high death rate. Okay?
How do you get it checked? Like, I know mine, but I don't know my daughter's.
Well, you know, I asked my doctor that, and she goes, well, we don't really keep that information. She said, but you can, like, go to Virginia Blood Services and get it checked. You know, like if you're going to go give blood, one of the things they'll do first off, and it's real simple, the way to check blood. We used to do it in labs until OSHA got involved. And OSHA was like, oh, no, you can't have real blood in the lab. Okay. And that's when I used to know my blood type. And we would literally do the little drop into the wells, and we would go through the processes and use the serums and figure out a blood type.
Should be using a birth certificate, because when they are born, they do give birth.
Oh, they do show, yes.
Yeah, they
Okay.
do. It's usually in the certificate. If not, then there are documentation which says that.
Yeah. Okay, on the birth certificate. Okay, yeah. So, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then when we look at the blood types, okay, like I said, we put them into A, B, O groups. Because you have A, you have B, you have AB, you have O. Yes, it is based on genetics. Okay? Now, forget that. Okay, so these genotypes that can exist. Do you guys remember how if you were big A, little a, big A, big A, all that sort of stuff? Okay, well, they're letting us know now the genotypes. Okay, it used to be that paternity was based totally on this. But they would be like, okay, well, wait a minute. I'm A, he's B, how did we have a type O? And it wasn't until people realized exactly these genotypes, that was always not the perfect science, okay? So now, of course, you know, you have all the DNA testing and all that sort of stuff. Because look at type A. Type A can be dominant-dominant or dominant-recessive. Same thing for B. Dominant-dominant, dominant-recessive. So yes, an A and a B could give a type O. Do you guys remember that on doing the little
squares?
Yeah, Punnett squares. So type O, type AB can only be big, big. Okay? So, and of course type O, the only thing they can pass along is the small I. All right? So this is what we end up getting for those genotypes of the red blood cell. When we look at antigen antibodies, like I was just trying to draw on the board, okay, we can see that any antibody A's, antibodies B's, I tried to represent them here on the board and how they would react against the corresponding red blood cell. And then, of course, they use that to type the blood. So in typing the blood, this is what they'll introduce it to. They'll introduce it to, like if you've got A, you'll have A and you'll have these seras like anti-A, anti-B, all this sort of stuff, and you check to see where it clumps. And that helps you know what that person's blood type is.
So the,
It's real simple.
the antibodies are the only things that make the blood clump.
The antibodies encountering that wrong red blood cell causes them to clump.
Is that the only thing that will? As far as we're talking about right now.
As far as we're talking about right now.
Okay.
Okay? Like I said, under these conditions, we're assuming blood is flowing freely through all the vessels. Okay? The only way that anything would cause the clumping is given the wrong blood.
I guess what I'm asking is if there's like any fibers that are present that are what's actually catching it, or if it's just them getting tangled up.
Remember,
themselves.
the only thing that the blood is carrying the fibroblast, all right, which is just simply the protein that's going to have the ability to give rise to a fiber, but the only time that should come into play is when there has been a breach. When I say breach, okay, I mean that there has been, and normally when we think about somebody bleeding, we tend to think of them as bleeding because there has been a trauma to the integumentary system, okay? Something has caused a break. And in doing that, it also causes a break in blood vessels. However, inside of our body, 24/7, 365, 366 if it's a leap year, we are having vessels break and heal all the time. It doesn't always have to be a breach in the integumentary system for bleeding to occur. Perfect example, a bruise. A bruise is a breakage of those vessels under the skin where nothing came through. And they've got to heal. And there's this whole huge process of that. Woo! Which we're going to talk about. Okay? So, now, red blood cells, making sure we get the right one. The other part. All right. In your blood type, those of you who know it, does it have positive or negative attached to it?
Yep.
Negative?
Positive.
Positive? Negative? Yeah. What does that mean?
Something with your RH group.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
There you go.
It does have RH, that the other one doesn't have RH, so it's like plus minus.
Okay, so it took us a while to figure this out, okay, that this was another factor associated with the red blood cell and, of course, the person's ability to get the right blood and that sort of thing. And it was named after studies that were done with rhesus monkeys. And RH, meaning rhesus, okay, was discovered. Now, this is a group that includes another antigen on that red blood cell. All right? Now, if the person is RH positive, this means they have the D antigen. If they are RH negative, they don't. Now, for the most part, no big deal. Okay? For example, if I knew my blood type, and let's say that I was A negative, and they give me A positive, that's okay. All right? I just now became A positive rather than A negative, but hopefully saved my life. All right? The problem that does occur from this is pregnancy. This is where it causes the most problem. So, we will now have mom and baby, okay, with baby being affected the most, okay? What it ends up creating in pregnancy, hemolytic, let's take that term apart, all right? Hemo, red blood cell. Lytic, what does lytic do? Lyse, what does it mean to lyse? Break it apart. It now breaks apart the red blood cells in the fetus. So it's termed hemolytic disease of the newborn, or HDN, also known as erythro, red blood cell, blastosis, breaking it up, fetalis of the fetus. What happens is, mom is negative, but baby ends up being positive. Because remember, it's a combination of egg and sperm, okay? In the first pregnancy, it's uneventful. Baby's usually born fine, mom's fine, okay? It's going to be any other pregnancies that will have a problem, because mom was now exposed to the positive blood, but she was negative. Remember, I just said that's okay, all right? It just means you have now developed in the blood antibodies against that RH, against that antigen. So, next pregnancy, what those antibodies want to do, because chances are the next pregnancy will also be positive, okay? What it's going to do, it will cross those antibodies from the mom, cross the placenta, and attack the red blood cells of the fetus. They begin to get destroyed.
I thought you said that once you're exposed to it, if you're negative, when you're exposed to the positive, then you become positive. So how could that come up again?
What you did when you got exposed, it didn't clump, it didn't do anything to you, but you did develop an antibody to it. So in other words, if I was negative and given positive, it's not that I'm going to die, but my body, because it was something foreign, it developed an antibody.
So I was thinking that what you were saying is that, say I was negative and then I got pregnant and my baby was positive, I thought then I became positive as well. I just can deal with it.
You have developed antibodies.
Okay.
Okay? That's the difference. The person who is already positive doesn't have antibodies.
But my blood type is still negative? Or has it changed to a positive?
Yeah, but I don't know if they change it to positive. They may have it now listed as A negative with RH positive factors.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they give the wording to it, but that lets them know that you have now the antibodies
Mm-hmm.
in the blood. And it's the antibodies, which under normal conditions are not a problem, okay? Until you may have to be given positive blood again.
I also thought that when that's happened, that did your body naturally take care of it, or are you given something that lets you deal with it the first time, but then your body starts rejecting it
Now,
if you do it again?
are you thinking about pregnancy?
Yeah.
All right, hold on, because I was getting to that. Okay. So now, second pregnancy, because antibodies from the mom will cross the placenta, they will go and attack those red blood cells. But usually what happens is, after this occurs in the first pregnancy, because they're